How do you motivate someone? No one? See, as an executive coach, I'm absolutely bombarded with this question. And I don't blame them. See, the truth is, you really can't motivate anyone to do anything they don't want to. At least not the way you think you can. See, this question always makes me think back to my childhood. I'll admit it. Growing up was a serious pain in the ass. For the first 10 years of my life, I refused to eat almost anything. My poor parents, they'd get so worried, they'd take me to the doctors thinking there was something physically or mentally wrong with me. Now, I'm not saying they were wrong, but in this case, it wasn't quite the case. I remember for years they tried to force me. My mom would pull out the trusty old wooden spoon or take the slipper right off her foot and just smack me to the back of the head. Parenting must have been so fun in the 80s. She'll also be the first to tell you that it didn't work, right? I also remember for years they tried to bribe me, and I gotta say, they were getting warmer. See, I had a weakness for ice cream. So as long as I'd want dessert, I'd finish my food. But even the sweet taste of Haagen-Dazs, actually, I'm lying. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember. It was actually Heavenly Hash back in the 80s. But I'll say Haagen-Dazs for the youngins today, all right? I've dated myself. But even the sweet taste of Haagen-Dazs couldn't motivate me to eat all the time. And then one day I remember I was just sitting there and my mom shows up. She's got a slipper in one hand. Hey, Ma. And Garen! She's got the ice cream in the other. And she just looks so defeated and discouraged. It's like she gave up. She's like, oh. And she asked me, what do you want to eat? Are you even hungry? And I was like, wait a minute. You mean I have a choice? Wow. But jackpot. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to convince you to feed your kids junk food or anything like that. I'll get a bunch of hate mails tomorrow. But my parents' approach taught me that there are 3 ways you can motivate someone. You can beat them with a slipper to the back of the head. You could bribe them with ice cream. Or you can empower them with choice. So what does this have anything to do with the modern workplace? Well, you don't have to think back to the days of ancient Egypt to find examples of bosses beating their employees now, do you? It happens all the time. Maybe not physically, I hope. But it either sounds or feels something like this. Shut up and do your job. It's what I pay you for. Is that familiar? It is to me. And the reason they get away with this is because they use a hybrid system of beating and bribing. After all, isn't that what a salary is? A form of bribe? I mean, let's be real and be brutally honest with me. If it wasn't for money, how many of you would go to work? Meh. Your bosses aren't here, so they can't see you. But I counted about 4. You want to try that again? Not too many. I'm kind of happy to see a few, though. It means there's hope. It means there's hope. See, one of the worst questions you hear is when you go for an interview and they ask you, why do you want to work here? And you're just like, I don't. Right? I like you. See, everyone knows the answer is money, at least most of the time. And it's almost as though they expect you to lie to them a little bit, right? I mean, can you imagine someone walking and being like, well, I'd really like to just come into this poorly lit office and spend about 40 hours a week in this tiny cubicle. I'd like to answer about 100 emails and phone calls a day. And if you can, I'd really appreciate it if you can make my job as stressful as possible. And if you can, make my life a living hell. Imagine. See, the question shouldn't be, why do you want to work here? For the very least, it should sound a little bit more like, other than money, why do you think you'd want to work here? And sadly, for so many leaders out there, just like ice cream, money is slowly losing its power. It's the employee that's now saying, well, other than money, why do I want to work here? Can you imagine the panic that's settling in right now? No wonder motivation is such a hot topic. So, what is it? What is motivation? Well, the way I see it, if I want you to do something for me, I got to give you something back, right? It probably has to be something you want. So I've broken it down to 2 basic steps. Find out what they want and give it to them. That's pretty much it. And it would be so much easier if money was all that we wanted. But it isn't. Is it? Why? Why is money not enough? The short answer is that the buzz just doesn't last. Right? I'm sure you've heard it all before. Think about that time you got that new job or the raise, the car or the smartphone in your pocket, and you tell me, how long did the buzz last? For me, maybe 2 weeks, max. And if you're lucky, maybe about 3 months. So unless you're going to give your employees a raise at least, every 3 months, so that's every season, you're going to have a hard time motivating them. So if money's not the answer, what is? I prefer to start with the question, why does anyone want anything? See, that's the key right there. I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this question, and when I found the answer, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. It was right there. So I'll ask you this, and please interact this time, okay? Who here wants to be miserable? No one? Stupid question, right? Let me see if I can top that one. Who wants to be happy and have their lives filled with joy? Did I even have to ask? Seems quite obvious, right? But if I know this, and clearly you all know this, why don't organizations know this? Why don't we use this knowledge to our advantage? See, it turns out that joy and the pursuit of happiness is the reason behind every single decision and action you and I have ever taken. It's why you start dating someone or break up with them. It's why someone might smoke and refuse to quit. It's also why some of you might be texting right now or taking a nap instead of listening to me talk. See, joy is the common denominator that connects us all, heroes and villains alike. And it's found in our values and our abilities to meet them. So if you want to know how to motivate someone, find out what makes them happy, what brings them joy, and help them achieve it. So the only question left to ask is, where do people find joy at work? And that's where I come in. See, my job is to basically help my clients figure out what they want. Which is so much harder than you can imagine. And I think it's because we're not used to being asked this question, let alone taking the time to answer it properly. I also like to make sure that what they want is what they really want, that it's directly connected to their joy. And the reason I do this is because I want to make sure that they'll be committed enough and motivated enough to achieving their goals. And by doing this, I started to notice a pattern. It's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy, just different. I call it the hierarchy of joy. What a name, eh? I love it. Trademark. Excuse me. And the way it works is simple. See, what I found is that most everything we want falls under one of three categories. I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'll do it with my hands. It's a pyramid. And we can either want to have, do, or be something. And what that means is that our sources of joy can either be external, such as money and material possessions, interactive, such as relationships and how we experience life, and finally, internal, like who we are and who we want to become. And as you'd expect, the higher you go up that scale, the more profound, controllable, and sustainable joy tends to be. So it's no wonder that if you were to ask a Buddhist monk what they want, they'd say, nothing. From what I read. It's also not a surprise that when I ask my clients the same thing, I hear about 100 different answers other than money. See, some find joy in the people they work with, in a sense of community and belonging. Some find it in purpose, that their jobs and their lives have meaning. Some find it in their leaders, and whether they're inspired to be a better version of themselves. See, the answers are as personal and as unique as the individual. And it's up to us to find out what makes them tick. So if we want a happy, productive, motivated workforce, we need to inspire positive change and humanize the corporate experience. We need to embrace empathy and master the arts of powerful questioning and listening. We need to become highly curious about what makes people happy and help them achieve it. And all we have to do is ask, what brings you joy? And how can I help? So what type of leader would you want to be? One that beats them to the back of the head with a slipper? One that bribes them with ice cream? Or one that maximizes their potential by empowering them with choice? The power to choose joy. See, if we're going to adapt to the next generation, we need to evolve. Because whether we like it or not, their motivation may very well be beyond money. Thank you. Thank you.